how to reduce it or to enhance it. That's what we mean by behavior, just as I've explained. The goal of psychological inquiry also could be to be able to make application. And of course, that's the final goal of scientific inquiry, and especially in psychology. That is to bring about positive changes in the lives of people and to be able to solve problems and improve people's quality of life. That's what psychologists do. So, but when we want to do this, oftentimes we want to go via the research approach. And when we want to go via the research approach, these are the steps that you need to take when you are to conduct such an activity. In other words, if you want to assess, predict, control, explain, you may adopt the psychological approach to do that by conducting psychological research. And conducting psychological research in this instance could mean that you do all the things that are listed here. And it's very, very critical for you to know that none of the things that are listed here, they may be as many as, if not 18, 20 or so, they are very, very important. And you cannot skip one step to think you want to achieve maximally at the end of the day. So for you to write any psychological report, to conduct it, you need to have a background. And that background is like introduction. What are the fundamentals, the motives? Then the next thing after establishing the background is to be able to situate the problem. What is the problem? Why must we investigate into COVID behavior? Because we are realizing that the third wave of COVID is about happening, because it has happened in Germany. It's about happening in France. And many of those who came into Nigeria over the past couple of weeks, many of them are from France, many of them are from Germany. So that's a problem. So every bit of what we want to do in such a way that we situate that problem, because it's the problem that is the driving force for that research. So what do you want to know? What do you now want to conduct the study? That's your purpose. The purpose of the study is the goal of your research. You may also have research objectives going with the purpose of research. Apart from this, you have what we call relevance of the study. The relevance of your study is the usefulness of your study. Why is the study justified? What will the study bring in terms of advantages to various clusters of people? Will it contribute to theory? Will it help to improve practice? Will it help us to know people more? Will it give us information upon which we make policy changes? So that's what we talk about when we are talking about relevance. Then the theoretical framework would be what have other writers spoken about concerning this topic, concerning the variable, concerning the population that you want to study, concerning the context within which that study is to be done. A theory is like an explanation for that phenomenon you want to study, a kind of background also, no doubt it's also a background, but it's talking about what others have thought about, maybe philosophically, in terms of what that problem is like. Some may want to explain it biblically, some may want to explain it traditionally, some may want to explain it scientifically. So these are different theories that may help one to, find reasons to why people may do what they need to do in terms of conducting research. And of course, under review of related studies, all research that have been conducted in times past, we begin to find previous publications, journals, write-ups published in the area that you are working on. Don't tell me that the problem you are working on, that you are the only one who is looking at the problem since the world was created. No, the problem has been on for quite some time. Somebody says they cannot hear anything. Is it true that every one of you cannot hear anything?
No, sir. We can hear you.
Can you hear? Because I saw a chat saying somebody saying that you cannot. Okay, somebody's already answering that person. Good, thank you. So let's move. But it appears I'm too fast, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Does it appear? But because where we are going today is far, and this lecture will have been ideal for 2-3 lectures, and whoever misses this lecture will have missed so much, because next class we are switching to something different. So listen, don't just speak because your voice is wobbling. So I'm talking about review of related studies, that is research published on the topic before yours. Okay, that's what you need to tell us. And that's why you oftentimes say, according to so, who wrote in 1960, contrary to so, who published in so on this topic, as compared to this, on and on. That's what you find under, review of related studies. And the next thing you have here is statement of hypothesis. An hypothesis is an hypothetical statement, or it's a tentative statement, okay? A predictive statement saying that because of A is there, B will likely happen, okay? It's just like saying boys that are tall will likely score more in basketball games than very short boys. That's an hypothesis. Do you know that? Do you know that? So because it may be so, because literature tells us so, and common sense tells us so, but it's not in all instances that people that are short will jump, people that are tall will jump, higher than those who are short. And you don't begin again to say that because a footballer is very tall, it's likely going to score more goals or perform better in football games. That's an hypothesis. So an hypothesis is a tentative statement which can be proved right or wrong, because you cannot just generalize to say that people that are short will not play as efficiently as the people that are short. Ronaldo is a tall person, and that doesn't mean that when you compare Ronaldo with other footballers, Lewandowski today, may play better than Ronaldo. And look at Messi, Lionel Messi. You see, he's fairly short, and can also play as well as almost at the same level with Ronaldo. So it's not compulsory for you to say because someone is short, it's not going to be a good footballer. I'm only saying that an hypothesis is a tentative statement which can be proved to be right or to be wrong. So what do you mean by operational definition of terms? Operational definition of terms means that we are trying to define, especially the variables that you are investigating in your study within the context of that study. What does that, concept, what does that terminology, what do they really mean? What do they mean within the context of this study? For example, you can be talking about, let's look at something that will have different operationalization. Okay, you are not, you are muted. But you can say, for example, age. Age could be the number of years someone has spent on earth. Am I correct? That's one definition of age. But in another study, age could mean something else. It could mean the lifespan of an equipment. So it depends. So when we say operational definition of term, that means let us know the meaning of that term within the context of the topic that you are researching into. Okay? The next thing that you want to talk about is methodology. Of course, I shared that with you earlier. When we say methodology, that is the structure, the framework, the mechanism by which the data will be collected step by step. Okay? That's what I mean by methodology. Some people will say method. Okay? So within the context of method, there are other things that follow from method. So you can have something like research design, population, setting, sample size, and in fact most other things you find below methodology. Most times they are issues that are within the context of research method. Okay? So the method by which that study will be done, it begins with the design. And when we talk about design, is it going to be a survey study? Is it going to be an experimental study? Is it going to be, things and things like that? So that's what we mean by research design. In other words, like you want to buy a Toyota car, even if it's a Toyota Corolla, you can have a design of 2007. You can have a design of 2020. They are not Toyota Corolla, but they are different. Because the design, the manner by which it was built is different, even though it's still Toyota Corolla. Then when we talk about the population is talking about people that you are going to include in your study, those that are going to respond to your, research question. Population that you are interested in studying, people, the community of people that will respond to your questionnaire or that will participate in this study to answer the research question. So setting means where that study will be done. It could be in one place, it could be many more places. That's what we mean by setting. Sample size determination means how many people scientifically are we going to include in the study? Will 500 people represent 5,000 people in that community? Or we need to increase it to 1,000 people to represent 5,000 people in that community? That's talking about sample size determination. Sample size meaning how many people from that population in that setting are we going to include in this inquiry that we are conducting? Of course, instrument means, psychological instruments especially. And most times, maybe assessment tools, measurement tools, questionnaires. These are instruments that are used in psychology. And may I tell you that most times there are designed questionnaires that are validated, that are produced just the same way we produce drugs by pharmacists. So also psychologists also develop tools for measurement and assessment. So so we'll know which instrument will be appropriate to be able to get an answer to this question that we have in mind. The procedure is the step-by-step of how you will carry out that study itself. And the result of findings will now be, after you have done the study, you now analyze, you scientifically test the extent to which your hypothesis is accepted or not accepted or not supported. And so the results will show that. And many times the results could be in form of graphs, could be in form of pie chart, could be in form of bar chart, could be in form of percentages. But beyond that, because all those examples that I mentioned, they are descriptive, techniques of analysis. But you could have inferential techniques of analysis, depending on the nature of the research question and the nature of the tool with which you conducted your study, and also the manner by which you even gathered that data. So you could have inferential methods like talking about chi-square, talking about analysis of variance, talking about analysis of covariance, etc., etc. In psychology, we are very interested in statistical measurement. And of course, right from the beginning, you must know that you must love statistics to be able to survive in psychology. And when you talk about ethical consideration, basically I mean that for any study that you want to conduct, there must be an ethics committee that will approve that you have to, or that you are given permission to conduct that study, so that you do not exploit potential participants in your study. Of course, result of findings, I've talked about that. Discussion, you now begin to explain why your results are the way they are, and you conclude and you recommend and tell us what could be shortfalls, weaknesses of what you have done. That's only by limitation. So basically, I'm summing all that I've said in these 4 bullets. Steps in conducting research: you have to conceptualize the problem, you have to collect data, you have to draw conclusions, you have to revise research conclusions. So that leads us to another important subtopic today. And you must be very, very attentive. When we talk about variables in research, I want to talk about variables in research. Because from your first day in a psychology department to your last day in a psychology department, these issues that I'm mentioning today will keep, resonating, will keep coming up almost during every lecture. So when we talk about a variable, what do we mean by a variable? A variable is anything that has the capacity to change its value and not consistent to having a fixed pattern. And it can have many patterns, and something that's liable to change or able to be changed or able to be adapted. So that's what we mean by a variable, capable of varying, capable of changing. So when we talk about variable, there are very many types of variables. We have dependent variable, we have the independent variable, we have extraneous variables. There could be many more, but at your level, I'm just limiting it to these 3 so that I don't confuse you too early. So I talked about what a variable is. I'm not talking about types of variables. So we have dependent variable. Some people will say DV, as dependent variable. That's an outcome variable. Okay, it is dependent on the influence of other factors within your research. For example, if I say the hour of the day will determine your dressing, so it means your dressing will depend on what hour of the day is it. If it is in late hour of the night when it's a little cold, you are likely to unstrip and possibly use fan. But at a hot sunny afternoon like this, you want to dress skimpy to reduce heat so that you don't sweat too much. So what your dressing is dependent on the temperature of the atmosphere. Another thing to talk about dependent variable is your attitude to Psych 101 could be a function of your preference for that lecturer. Okay, so that means your attitude is the dependent variable, but is dependent on the attitude. Is dependent on how you perceive that lecturer. So what will make your attitude to change will be maybe the how fast that lecturer is, how pleasant that lecturer is, will be what will influence the extent to which you will love or will not love Psych 101. So independent variable is the one that changed the outcome variable.